Sky News US analyst Michael Ware says despite Maine being one of the smaller US states, today's decision could expose problems with former President Donald Trump's election ambitions.
It's a small state. It doesn't have that many electoral college votes. I don't see it being one of the 5 or 6 states that will actually turn this election. But it's the danger of the symbolism and how that may ripple out and how that may energize pro-Trump supporters and anti-Trump activists. So there are broader ramifications. And like I said, you can easily peg this as a partisan decision by a Democratic Secretary of State. But what it does is it, for the second time in about a week or less, it has brought to the fore that there are serious legal issues hanging over and threatening to drown former President Trump's nomination, even for the GOP primary, let alone the general election.
Joining me now live for more on this is National Affairs columnist at the National Review, John Fund. John, thank you for joining us. Explain what this decision actually means.
Well, it doesn't mean that this is the second state in which Donald Trump will not appear on the primary ballot. The Colorado court, which ruled last week, ruled in such a way that if there had been an appeal to their ruling, Trump would stay on the ballot. That happened today. So now Maine is saying he can't be on Maine's ballot. If that were the case, I think that it would not necessarily affect the primary results, because I doubt that most states would follow Maine. Michigan, which has a Democratic Supreme Court, ruled Trump could stay on the ballot today. What it would mean, though, is it would mean a psychological blow to the Trump campaign that all of these attempts are being made to discredit him and to rule his candidacy invalid. It creates the perception that there is a permanent cloud over Trump's legitimacy.
So how much of this then can be attributed to a more political motive by Maine?
Well, let's listen to Congressman Jared Golden, who's the Democratic congressman from Maine. He voted to impeach President Trump in 2020, and he is very much anti-Trump. And he says this is an illegitimate decision. And it's illegitimate for the following reasons. One, Maine voters should make the decision that someone is invalid on the ballot, an insurrectionist, and Trump has not been convicted or even indicted for any of those things. Secondly, the Secretary of State is a very unusual position in Maine. It's not elected by the people. It's elected by the legislature, the Democratic legislature. It's an inside deal. So this is a woman who does not have the support of actually the voters of Maine. She has the support of the legislature of Maine in getting her office. And lastly, her background is extremely liberal. She was the executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union, which is an extremely liberal anti-Trump organization, for 8 years. And I believe that her decision is colored by that. I also would point out that the Republican senator from Maine, Senator Susan Collins, was perhaps the most moderate Republican in the Senate and has voted against Trump on many occasions in 2020, especially regarding impeachment and conviction. She says this decision is invalid, that it should be left to the Maine voters, not to one elected official who does not even answer to the voters.
So how then do you see this playing out now? Is it likely to go to the Supreme Court?
I think the Supreme Court is going to have to make some clarity here. And they don't want to. This is not a hot potato they want tossed into their laps. But I think that they're going to rule that in the absence of Donald Trump being indicted for insurrectionary activity on January 6, 2021, and in the absence of a conviction, he has not been proven to be an insurrectionist. And as a result, he should stay on the ballot, and that decision should rest with the voters, both in the primaries and should he win the Republican nomination in the general election.
How big of an impact do you think this will have on his chances for 2024?
Well, so far, these indictments, some are serious, some are less serious, have had the effect among the Republican primary base of turning Trump into something like a martyr. and has actually improved his electoral position. Since Trump was first indicted last March, he has gone up in the Republican polls. Now, there's a big caveat there. If Republican voters believe that Trump's legal problems and ongoing controversies make him a less likely winner in the November general election in about 11 months, they may start moving away from him. But so far, there's been no sign of that. And I believe that if this continues at this pace, where you have one state doing one thing, and then maybe a couple of weeks later another state, and ultimately the Supreme Court shoots all of that down, as I think they will, it will be viewed as ankle biting by Trump critics, and perhaps critics who might want him to win the nomination of the Republicans, but weaken him just enough to lose the general election to Joe Biden or another Democrat.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out. John Fund, thanks for joining us.